Well, it's good to be on here again. Got some things on my mind, and it's good to see that I don't have to use a streaming key to go live. It does seem like my internet's a little slow and I'm getting the little circle. Okay, so it's on. Good. Very good. So if you join and you want to say hi, make your comment there. We'll be talking. So I don't know necessarily if I'll get to responding to replies or not. Just got some things on my mind. I don't think I'll be too terribly long today. Uh, but I do want to discuss what I think is a topic that isn't being discussed, hasn't been discussed, and our churches are in desperate need to hear it. Some people say, well, who are you to be the one to give the message? I don't know. I don't know if you have to be anybody special to give a message. I do know that listening to those who can step back from a situation, and hi, Susan, and those listening to those who can step back from a situation and can view it from another vantage point, it's really, really wise to do that. Because people that can step back from a situation and see another vantage point are rare. People who are led solely by their intuition are mostly immune from being influenced by social pressure and by fear. But people who can do that, people who can step back and not be influenced greatly by peer pressure, they are the kind of people that don't force themselves on anyone else, because their ability to see is based on the fact that they're not pressured by others. So they understand that to influence someone properly, they can't use those tactics. So I can't force anybody to hear what I have to say. I can't bully or intimidate you to hear what I have to say. But I can tell you that I can step back and look at it from a perspective that most people cannot. Being led by intuition is extraordinarily rare. Look what the Bible says. Counsel in the heart of man is like a deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Proverbs 20, verse 5. So if you want to get wisdom and counsel, the best kind is the kind you have to go and listen and pull it out for yourself. You have to go find that wisdom, and you have to be responsible for getting it. So if you're wise, listen to what I have to say. It might be useful, it might be practical to you, it might be helpful to you. Often liberals state that Christians don't want an unborn baby to die. But after they're born, they don't want to help them. And I have to say that's basically true. Why do we sit in our pews year after year, decade after decade, but we don't create at the church itself time to get together solely to help those within the church? How is it that not just week after week, Sunday after Sunday, but year after year, decades go by, and we're not meeting together with a plan to help anybody? Has it occurred to anyone that a child is a child for 18 years? Not only for a baby shower. I like the idea that women get together and they, even sometimes when a baby is unexpected, that the ladies will sometimes still support them with a baby shower. That's a good start. But does it ever occur to the ladies that the baby's still there a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and that person may still need help? Where do we get this idea that everything is supposed to be symbolic in Christianity? We're only supposed to symbolically help. We go to church and we symbolically talk about helping people, but we never actually spend our time at the church doing it. And notice my words, at the church. What does every sermon say? Well, take what you learn here and go home and do it. Well, why are we going to church then? A lot of kids ask at school, well, if I have homework, what am I learning at school? Well, I got an idea. Why don't we use our time at the church to get together and do something? Wouldn't that be amazing? If helping widows in their time of affliction is the definition of good religion according to the book of James, then why do we go to church only to hear sermons about helping them, but we're not going to church to meet and make plans to help them? Somebody answer that for me. Why aren't we regularly discussing real ways to regularly aid and benefit the blind and the deaf? I don't mind seeing somebody do sign language for a song one time, but I'm disturbed when that's the only time it's done. What, the deaf people aren't supposed to hear the sermon? You say, well, we don't have anybody else that knows sign language. Well, what do you say we find a teacher of sign language and we learn? Ever thought about that? There's no deaf people in our community. But rather than our community, I just wonder if we're even going to help the people in our church. Here's another question for you. Why do families with disabled children still coming to church year after year, decade after decade, have to go home every Sunday to have to bear their problems alone yet again? Where's the action plan? You know, my kids don't get to participate in so much at church. It's unreal. You know, things like church camp, only one of my kids can go. The other two, because they're disabled, are just forgotten about. No one tries to help them. And their attitude is just sort of like, yeah, oh well. Do you know how discouraging that is? Can you imagine being the kid that had to be left out for 15 years, watching all the other kids go? Does that bother you? I'll tell you, it bothers us. You know, the church in the book of Acts had all things in common, and they helped each other. But you know, we don't even know where to begin to help one another. And if anybody tries to recommend it, they're just looked at like they're saying something weird from outer space, like there's something odd about that person. Why aren't they just sitting there listening? Why are they rocking the boat? Why are they being so critical? So no one even knows how to begin to help somebody. You know, even the Muslims help their own people. Sure, they spit on anybody that's not a Muslim. You know, off with your head. You know, they don't deserve help. In Pakistan, you know, a woman right now is in prison because she drank out of the same can as a Muslim. And tens of thousands of Muslims want to stone her. But they help their own people. You understand that? At least they have enough sense to help their own people. But what about us? You know, it's kind of better than what we do, really. Because all we do is say we're going to help our own, and we say that we're for helping others. We have a theology that says we should help other people. We have a theology that says we should help people. But in practice, in reality, on Sunday morning and on Wednesday and every other day in between, nobody's actually organizing. Nobody's having a meeting. Lots being said every Sunday. Decade after decade goes by and absolutely nothing happens. Why aren't church members regularly being asked to join the deacons' meetings and being asked for their ideas? Why does everyone think that just a handful of people are supposed to figure out all the needs for the church and meet it. Explain that. I don't understand it. You say, oh, you're being like those two that were questioning Moses. No, I don't think we shouldn't have pastors and deacons. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, how come those pastors and deacons don't want to meet with everybody and try to figure out what everyone needs and to help organize those people in the meetings? That's what I'm saying. Why aren't meetings being regularly organized to discuss and then meet the needs of the members? You know, I actually know someone, and he joins a lot of times. Maybe he'll join tonight. I don't know. I know someone who carried his wife to church every day. She had multiple, muscular dystrophy, and needed carried into the church building. And for over a decade, he'd have to carry her into the church building, and everyone in the church came by and said, oh, I love you. Love you. Hope you're doing good. But you know, not one time in 10 years or however many years it was, did they ever help open the door or go down to the car and pick her up and help carry her inside. You see, that's what I'm talking about. I guarantee you in those 10 years there was a plethora of sermons that said to help other people. But not one time did anyone meet and say, let's help that person right there. Let's bring it down from the ethereal realm into a real, practical, useful, actual behavior and action. Churches are only symbolically churches today. They're not really doing anything. They're living in symbols. And then when you tell them what their symbols mean, they reject it. And that's sad too. We must stop looking at people who ask questions and who seek real answers as subversives or as weirdos. Real answers to real theological questions should be intelligently discussed and reasoned out. In the book of Isaiah, God said, come, let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. That's Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Remember what I said, Isaiah 1:18. It's important. Wouldn't you know it, Thomas Jefferson was speaking to someone named Peter Carr, and I'll be honest, I didn't take the time to really delve into who Peter Carr is or why they were discussing, okay? But it is a famous quote, and I have seen it before. And it goes like this, Thomas Jefferson talking to Peter Carr, fix reason firmly in her seat, and call to her tribunal every fact, every opinion. Question with boldness even the existence of a God. Because if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Now let me tell you something really interesting. You know why I told you to remember Isaiah 1:18? And Isaiah 1:18 said, let us reason together. And Thomas Jefferson said to question with boldness. Well, guess when he did that? He did it on August 10. Or as they write it probably back then and the way they would write that today, 10/8, 108. Now 108 and 118 is the same thing. Because when you write numbers, I have an entire database of how important those numbers are. 118, 811, 108, 801, you know. It goes back and forth. So August 10 would be 810 or 10/8, however you want to write it. And 108 is important all around the world. Now, to show you how the churches don't teach what their symbols really mean, and they really don't understand their Bibles at all, let me give you an example using what we just did. Okay, if you take, remember that was Isaiah 1:18, okay? if you take the numbers 18, okay, it's hard to do backwards. You take the numbers 18 and you add all the way to 81, you get the number 3168. Okay? So take 18 plus 19 plus 20 plus 21. Stop when you get to 81 and it'll add together to be 3168. Well, why is that significant? Well, right here. If you take the size of the earth and you were to draw a square around its perimeter to touch every single side of the earth, that would be 31,680 miles. That's not a coincidence, folks. So God's talking about reason, and the reason that he uses, the verse that he uses, oh, wow. It becomes that? Really? What are the chances of that? And by the way, the Bible is clear full of more examples like that. And this, if you're from our town, is why Jalea Davis was murdered at mile marker 181, like 18 to 81. And that's why they were using verses like, and that's not the whole reason, there's a lot more, and it has to do with marking an important person and the death of, it's about Hugh Squire that I write about all the time. All that's related to this too, but this was a code they were using while they did it. But notice that Isaiah 1:18 says, they shall be as white as snow, though they be red like crimson. Oh, they killed her, red like crimson. Do you get it? At mile marker 181. And there it was, 18 to 81. Isaiah 1:18. Do you see? That's why President James A. Garfield was killed in 1881. Oh, he served in the Civil War when Jefferson Davis was president, you see. And your whole Bible's full of that, and some people use that in their murders. They do it to Mark Hugh, like I always talk about. In that case, it had to do with Whitey Bulger being let out of prison, a few days before, or about a week or two before. And if you just look at everybody that knows anything as if they're weird, and if you just look at anybody that asks questions or wants to challenge your orthodoxy a little bit, not for the sake of challenging it, but for the sake of teaching and helping you to understand the real world as it is, if you think they're just all heretics and crazy, then you're not dealing with reality. Why should anybody listen to you? You mean nobody can question with boldness anything in your church? No, they can't. Believe me, they can't. Never been in one where you could. Oh, you're not supposed to ask questions. You're not supposed to learn new things. Okay, so that's why so many people end up leaving churches when they get older, because they have questions and you can't answer them. I can. You can't. But you could if you'd listen to me. Then you could answer their questions. But you can't answer their questions because you don't have a clue what's going on in the real world. Well, I'm going to stop right there, and that's a real sermon. Why don't we start meeting and actually helping people? Quit looking at people that bring you new ideas, like helping people, like planning to help people, as weird. Stop looking at people who have other ideas, like let's ask questions and really learn new things about the Bible, as just being odd and crazy. Let's really think about helping those blind people. Let's really think about helping those deaf people. Let's really think about helping those disabled people. And not say go home and do it. No. Let's spend our church time doing it. You see, that's why decade after decade after decade you preach the same old tired sermon. Go home and help people, and nobody ever gets helped. And then week after week and year after year, you wonder why it's never done. Listen to what I said. Yes, I'm somebody that could step back and tell you what you needed to hear, because if you don't like me for it, I don't care. It won't affect me one bit. I'm the rare one in a zillion people who can do that. And then if you hate me for it, I'll just look straight at you and I won't hate you back. And it'll drive you crazy, and you'll either accept what I say or you'll run out of the room screaming and hollering. I don't care either way. Most people run out of the room screaming and hollering, just like when the Jehovah's Witnesses come to my house. And I listen to everything they say, and then I just calmly tell them the reality of what's going on. And every time they're the ones that go running. I'm not mean to them. I'm not mad at them. But people have a real hard time hearing truth. And I just gave you a real big, heavy dose of truth. So do something with it. Instead of being like the Pharisees and ripping your shirt, when you see Jesus in the temple. No, why don't instead, once you recognize the reality of who's standing in front of you, and I don't mean me, but I mean the truth that I'm saying. Okay? Don't spit on me and crucify me. What I told you was truth. So take that truth and do something real with it. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.